Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Aha, the murder weapon. I see it. It's called Life's Too Short, Dessert First.
Yeah, that could be my murder weapon for sure.
Yeah, the author killed the butler with a cone of coffee. Okay, so not a cone of ice cream. So it's a close-up shot of maybe your left hand holding up a waffle cone. There's a little bit. You can just see the hint of the napkin at the bottom. It's freshly scooped. It's a funny thing that when you know how photography works, how product photography works, like when you do product photography of ice cream, it's usually not ice cream because that would just melt. So it's usually stuff like mashed potato or whatever. So in this particular case, if you just look at the stuff and you're sort of separated from the high sugar content, and okay, so it's this really strange brown color, almost tan. It's a very full cone, caramel something, coffee something. Dessert first. Why dessert first? Life's too short.
Absolutely. My late mother-in-law was notorious for every time she'd look after the kids, they would have chocolate cake before they had dinner.
Nice.
And, she always thought we never knew, but then one day they took it into the freezer and went, "Oh, there's already a cake in here." And, oh, so we left one.
That's really funny.
But yeah, it was always, she was always telling the kids, life's too short. You have to eat your dessert first, and hopefully they ate dinner. Sometimes I'm not so sure, but
That's really sweet. But in the end, they turned out okay.
Oh yeah,
they grew.
Yeah,
they grew. They're fine.
They're fine.
So where did you make this photo?
That was actually after Canmore, and we stopped at an ice cream shop, and it was just because it looked so good. It was
right.
Just one of those things, and it was, I can't even remember what the flavor was now, but it was like an espresso with little bits of chocolate and little bits of caramel in it. It was so good.
Yep, it looks nice. Looks very nice. So one of the when I was in BC, I got myself a motorcycle, and then I did a tour of basically Vancouver Island. Just did about like 500 or 600 kilometers one afternoon, and one place that I stopped at was super, super hot, and I wanted ice cream, so I stopped over and got this ice cream, and it's just massive, massive ice cream. And then some kid is like, he also got some like triple scoop or whatever, and he's standing there, and we're both outside. It was like we had this moment where this kid's probably about like 11 years old. I'd say relatively dorky looking. He was kind of dorky looking, with this big sort of ice cream, and he was just like eyes wide. And we're both sitting there. It was really funny, like me in my little motorcycle outfit, licking an ice cream, and him next to me, and there was this thing where I kind of was looking at him, and he took a very exuberant lick. Like, in a sense, it's like, here's this moment, life's too short, and he's just like surrendered to the whole sensual sort of state of just like licking this ice cream. And then, of course, it popped off the cone and fell on the ground. So it was like
oh no.
And I was like, there's a life lesson in that, my young friend. But he was devastated. He was devastated. Aww. Okay. So I just told you a very silly story. Now, why don't you weave some kind of insight from your life as to this idea of life's too short? Because that's really the point of the podcast, right? So life's too short. Dessert first.
Yeah, it was really funny when I sat down and I was reading what the podcast was about. And I'm like, it's kind of ironic because this is probably a raw point in my life right now. Just this whole move across the country and basically starting over. Like, I had whatever fit in my car, which ironically I had to get a bigger car before I left because my car wasn't going to make it. But it was just me and my 2 cats, and everything we own was in that car. And coming out here, as I said, I'm just waiting to start my new job with my publisher, which I'm super excited about. But I think this is the longest point in many years that I've just been kind of still. Not,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to get up and go to work. I don't have to get up and, take care of kids. I don't have to get up and do this. And it's just a couple of mornings it was like, okay, so what do I do?
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, where's my pen and paper? I need to get some writing in, or I need to do some editing. And, it's just that whole starting over from raw.
Yeah. Nice. And in a way, facing possibility and just kind of having that. It's funny because when you're parenting, like actively parenting, full on parenting, in a sense, your needs are focused. Like you say, like, okay, this is what you have to do to get through your day. This is what's going to happen. And then once your kids kind of give you that space, move out, or you move out, and as you're here, it's like, oh, I have to decorate a new living space, and then create a new relationship to my environment. Right?
Yep.
How's it going? How are you doing?
Very slowly. Well, like I said, the first week I was here, we ended up with my mom here. So we ended up out and about and doing the shopping stuff more than actually unpacking. The
Hmm.
second week, I think I just sat there going, wow. And the third week,
Yeah.
I went to the Okanagan and took a real vacation, just me. I didn't have to
Nice.
worry about
Nice.
kids or anything. It was just, my brother, my sister-in-law, and I, and we just did what we felt like doing every day, which was
That's great.
really awesome. And now I'm back in the apartment going, oh, I have to get my computer set up because I'm doing this podcast and I don't know where my webcam is.
So good. It's listen. It's yeah, and I'm sorry I was late, but it's all good. It worked out in the end. Yeah. So just so you can, I've decided to maybe weave this as a kind of because like the podcast evolves in the way that your writing evolves, right?
Yes.
So 150 plus episodes down, I'm like, okay, what else can I add to enrich both your experience in this conversation and maybe the listener's experience. So I was thinking maybe weaving in some of the things that I've developed and learned over the past 20 years that I've lived in Hong Kong. So how's this? Let's turn the focus. We'll just turn it around. We'll spin the camera backwards. And then I think you've had enough seeds in your soil, in your fertile soil, fertile mind. Why don't you ask me a question? What would you like to know?
Okay. How did you get started doing a podcast?
Ah, there we go. Okay, so the
Oh,
podcast. So I'm that kind of person who, if you're a writer, you definitely have this, right? Where it takes a kind of disquiet or a kind of a restlessness. And sometimes in your case, I guess that restlessness it turns into a narrative where you wake up one morning and you're just like, that's kind of what I'm going to write in that direction. Maybe I'm just projecting, but maybe that's a bit like you. In my case, every once in a while, I'll have this impulse. And so when the pandemic started, I took my daughter from Hong Kong to Savannah, Georgia, right where my sister lives. So this was in the early weeks when COVID just hit Hong Kong, and Hong Kong was like this sort of ground zero epicenter. It was like, ah. So we thought, okay, look, I'll just take her away. So because they're doing remote schooling anyways. So take her away to Savannah, stay there for however long, and then come back after COVID is done. Right? Sure. So we're there 7 weeks. I decided, okay, well, I'll start a project, which was to create a podcast based loosely around people's photographs and telling stories. And the idea that we only have one life. How do we make it count?
absolutely. Have you ever written a book?
There are 6 books out there in nonfiction books. I was a ghostwriter for a very kind of successful Hong Kong businessman, and so two of the books are kind of co-authored. The other books were ghostwritten, and the whole function of those things are around this thing called service leadership and what I call service network leadership. So I was thinking about you as this sort of So will you be working remotely or for this job, or are you going to be going into the office?
I will be working remotely. I do kind of hop over to her office every now and then because she needs to show me a lot of stuff, because eventually I will be taking over as publisher and she'll be taking on more of a marketing role. So it's like,
Oh, wow.
it's
That's great.
it's a big scary right now. Wrapping my head around the fact that I will be my own publisher is just kind of mind blowing. But
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're gonna. So what happened? I think what happens is that we go through experiences and we learn so much on the way that consciously maybe you. If I said, okay, write down what you've learned, and you'll be like, write down what I've learned. It's like, yeah, like write down what you've learned about being a publisher. Here's a page or here's a notebook, and then just give me a list. And then you'll sit there and you can start drafting a list. And maybe after 15 or 20 things, you'll be like, okay, listen, this is getting tiring. This is so boring. This is like, it's ridiculous. But that's only what you're conscious of.
yeah.
There's this whole, like, there's more than a decade of training on what it's like to be on the writer's side, working with a publisher, that is just so full and so rich that I have no question and full confidence that you're going to be just fine.
Well, the funniest part is the first day we sat down and we were doing training. She's showing me all these things, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do that. I've done that.
Sure.
I've done that." Because I've also worked with other authors, and I do book coaching and stuff as well. So I help them develop their book from, kind of chicken scratch. In one author's case, yes, chicken scratch on a page, to we're getting ready, probably publish his book next year. So I've already kind of taken that journey on my own and built that little foundation. So I already have the clue what I'm doing.
Yep.
It's just going to be getting in there and getting to work doing it.
And like, it's like driving. When you first start, you're just like, what do I have to pay attention to? And then, after a few weeks, you'll be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing.
You tell everybody else what they're doing wrong. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so somebody who's listening who's thinking, writing a book. Is there a book in me? How do you help them cross that? How do you help them kind of find that inner sort of momentum to start writing?
Absolutely. I've worked with a couple of people that they're like, yeah, I have this book, I have this idea. And you just have to sit and write out the ideas. Like, write out, even if you just make point notes, start out somewhere. Eventually, you'll figure out if you're really good at putting it together as a book or not. It's like, I've worked with people who have managed to make these little notes and make it turn into more of a story than they thought they would be able to. And my friend that I'm writing a fantasy novel with, I just go along and flesh it out behind him because he's doing a pretty good job of it now.
Right.
And whereas I've had other people that have sent me stuff that I'm like, this is an outline. You have to fill in the blanks, and I can't do that part for you. This is your book. You need to fill this out the way you want it. If you want to write a book, the strongest piece of advice is write what you love to read and learn your craft. Because if you don't learn how to write and you just throw a book out there, it's not going to go anywhere. People won't read it.
Right. Excellent advice.
Thank you.
Excellent advice. And also, life's too short. Jump into that ice cream. These conversations are great. Thank you so much. One more time, your website?
DianeBator.ca.
Sweet. Diane, thank you so much. Have a fantastic week. And yeah.
You as well, Ren. Thank you so much.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.